Despair isn't personal, and that means I don't have to do anything about it. Yesterday, I had an experience of feeling enormous despair about what's happening politically in the world, in North America. A number of different political situations that I don't need to detail. And I noticed just saying that there's a reaction. um, a lot of reaction. And despair is one that showed up really loudly, feeling like there's nothing I can do and everything is wrong and things are really bad and they're not how they should be and they're getting worse and it's going to get worse before it gets better and I don't know how to make it better. It's heavy and very, very, very painful. But there was an insight that is the reason I bring this here, and I'd love to share it. Maybe I'll spoil the insight and then I'll tell the discovery after. The spoiler is that despair isn't personal, and that means I don't have to do anything about it. And it's here, and it's okay. And there's a sense of almost falling, collapsing into the sensation that I call despair. And this experience is extremely peaceful, transparent, and loving in the middle of the same sensations that change, but that are also despair and pain, emotional pain and anguish. And I'd love to share about this process because for me, it's really familiar. And I benefit from overhearing myself share my own realization of seeing through it. So yesterday, I accidentally consumed a piece of news that was really triggering in the moment. And I was trying to like not trigger myself with any really sensational news stories. And then I came across something and yeah, and my entire world became very cranky and agitated and irritated. And there was a reaction emotionally in my body and mentally of like resisting and saying no and talking to myself about what's going on and what I want to see differently and why it's wrong and what I want to change and how it's going to cause so many problems for me and everyone else and I'm not going to be able to fix it. So there's this whole story that got triggered that I triggered in myself in seeing just a short headline. And so then I spent the whole rest of the afternoon cranky and trying to make it better. So I went out for a walk in the sun and I met up with my partner and asked him to support me in a very specific way and asked for a hug. And both of those things did make me feel better a little bit, but they didn't actually. What I was trying to do with those actions was to clean up the mess of the emotions that I was feeling, which were emotions that I could not control. I cannot control, and I wanted to control in that moment. And as I'm saying this, I'm really getting in touch with that one who wants to control. It's a me. It's me feeling powerful and trying to do something really with my mind mentally to control these emotions that were showing up in me. And so usually I would, if I were to fall into this pattern, I would stay in that cranky place for a period of time. And then I would distract myself out of it by exercising or working or meeting friends or going out for dinner. I would distract myself and push down the feelings of being out of control, feeling despair, feeling pain. And when I named the emotion despair, I immediately had Lisa's voice in my head saying, why not go straight to despair? And maybe this is a good moment actually to shout out Lisa, who is my teacher, Lisa Schumacher, one of the lead teachers at the Leela School of Awakening, alongside Eli Jaxon-Bear and Jared Franks, who I'm naming as really the teachers who showed me this option of another way. And for people who are listening, if you're not familiar with these three teachers, oh, check them out. Like they're the people who taught me how to see through all of this. And the reason I have Lisa's voice in my head, go straight to despair, is because that's what she said to me. Why not go straight to despair? And what that brings up for me is this recognition that, yeah, I was aware of an emotion of despair, and I was putting my attention everywhere except for on despair because I didn't like it. I still don't like despair. It's not pleasant. It's very uncomfortable. It's not nice. I think we can all agree, despair, not a nice feeling. And it doesn't really matter that I don't like it, except that when I have an opinion about it, I'm distracting myself. And this brings back to this separation. Even in naming the emotion as despair, it's like I'm putting it down there. Over there, there's something coming up in my body and it's despair, but I'm the one who's up here labeling it, naming it. And in this body, it shows up as kind of trying to control it by naming it. But even before I add control, just the action of naming despair creates an idea that there's a separate feeling of despair and there's someone who's observing it. Even having this awareness is useful because now I'm really in this moment in touch with like, what are the strategies I use very specifically to make despair separate from me? There's like a little squeeze in my body. There's a mental picture of like darkness. There's a mental picture of what it will look like in the future. And there's an emotional flavor. And there's a story about why it's all wrong, why despair itself is wrong. And what I discovered in sitting quietly, what I discovered in exposing intimately how I make myself separate and superior from despair. I could then see immediately how it's not true. It's not true that this experience that I call despair is somewhere outside of me or separate from me or different from me or even a label about me. It's not about me. It's included in being myself. It's included in who I am, not as an idea of who I should be, but it's like in this moment, I am dissolving any sense of wall between me and something else. This is the collapse that I mentioned at the start. It feels as though dissolving the physical form. And in that, the sensations that I call despair merge and spread out. And I haven't changed anything or pushed anything away, but the experience is completely peaceful. tender, available, and quiet. There's no struggle. And in this moment, I'm noticing how there's a continued falling into this as opposed to picking up some idea from it to make another wall around something else, to make another sense of separation. It's like the sense of separation is taking something personally, making something about me, which necessarily makes something else separate from me. What's left is love, tender, formless love. And I'm really grateful because love is how I want to show up in response to what's happening politically in the world. I don't want to be engaged in fights that don't help. I don't want to hurt myself by feeling anguish and trying to control it. And I don't want to cause harm to anyone else. I do want to show up with love, to be love, and to open with that.
We've certainly opened this podcast with that. It's very rich to hear your discovery.
Words really fall away. But I do want to say out loud how so grateful I am for this possibility, for Eli and Lisa and Jared and anyone for reflecting back to me this possibility to have a peaceful and loving relationship with self as self. It's a revolution internally.
And now here you are spreading that gift just by sharing your own experience, sharing your own internal relationship with yourself.
I like that you use these words, relationship with yourself, because certainly that is how it starts. It's about observing how I'm talking to myself, how I'm relating to myself. And here at this, having collapsed and fallen apart into self, it's being myself wholeheartedly, naturally, and without extra effort of any kind.
What would you say is the moment where the shift took place that allowed you to really see through this sense of separation that you're talking about?
There were a few moments. One was turning the lens in on myself and deciding to tell the truth about what I saw. And then another moment was staying with this internal awareness and exposing to myself that I was creating separation myself. I was doing this internally, independently to myself, and blaming it on other circumstances and thinking it was just how things are. But I saw in many different ways how I create a separate wall between me and anything. I saw how I was holding on to things and making them about me, taking things personally. And that was really important and continues to be important. And then another moment was this in seeing through how I was creating it, just trying out like, well, okay, if I'm doing this, what if I just don't do that in a moment? What if I just don't talk to myself at all about the word despair? and it turns around. Like Eli says, it turns right side up.
So you turned inwards, took responsibility for yourself, told the truth, and were just silent. Your reaction is funny. It's like you took a moment to take in what I said, and then all of a sudden just smiled and nodded your head yes. You explained it beautifully, and I just summed it up in a few words that summarized it neatly. But really, there's a lot there about being in touch with what's happening internally. It's very intimate. It's not a step-by-step process, the way that maybe I'm making it sound.
It's about being curious internally and just finding out for myself without having to believe anything.
The one piece I would love to add in is about how it takes being dissatisfied. Because you could have gone on forever struggling, blaming, resisting, this internal war, distracting yourself, all of that. But there has to be a part of you that just is so done with that, so dissatisfied with that, that then that is the impetus to start self-examination.
Yeah, I would say fed up. Like, I know where this goes, and I know it doesn't get better, even though, you know, I can soothe a little bit. It doesn't get better by walking down that path. However, this direction does get better. It also is really honest about what's not going to get better. And it's hands off about being personally responsible while being still completely involved. It's not just a concept that freedom is here. And it's not an empty promise that anyone can wake up and experience peace in the middle of everything. Truly, if it's possible for me, it's possible for anyone.
That's right. It just takes strong intention. And that's why I bring up about being fed up. I've noticed with myself that I have just such a sensitivity to suffering, like these mental patterns and trying to get into control and struggling and resisting. I'm just at a point where it's like I can't go there anymore. I've tried it for so long, and I know obviously it doesn't work. Like you said, it doesn't make anything better. And so that's the start for me. That opens the possibility to realize that freedom is here. And you just have to be willing. You know, it's like you said, despair doesn't feel good. Who wants to feel despair? I don't think anyone's putting their hand up for that one. But it's here. It's here. You can go on fighting it and see where that takes you. Or it's like, what if you just say yes? There's no separation, just like you explained. And I love the discovery you made. I love the way you explain it.
It's like a paradox of surrendering in to this self and not lying down to life, but then being able to stand up and spread out as love itself. Doesn't mean I'm tolerating garbage. It doesn't mean I'm going to opt out of all political conversations. It means that I am love participating and here.
How does it feel to say, I am love?
I was also just checking that. I was like, ooh, it feels incredibly powerful and surrendered at the same time. Just continual surrendering and like a feeling of feeling lit up from the center and radiating out. I imagine this is how the sunshine feels.
It's an audio podcast, but I can see Maeve and she is shining. So just to let you guys know.
And you are as well, Jonas.
Well, I've certainly benefited from hearing and feeling into your discovery.
Thank you for letting me share. It felt meaningful today, and I'm grateful to record and speak it out loud. Speaking from silence as an exercise that we're discovering in real time.
How perfect. Thank you so much, Maeve.
Thank you, Jonas.